Thanks, everybody. I appreciate everyone coming this morning. We have an exciting day today. We're going to hear from some fantastic speakers. I look forward to it. So we're going to try to get this going, get the meeting started, and I'm going to turn this over to Mitch, and he's going to kick it off.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks, Paul. I appreciate everybody's welcome and service to this board. It's been really an honor over the last couple of months to get to know most of you, and I really appreciate your support and guidance. I wanted to maybe just start off with just a few updates and some things that we're excited about and some of the things that I think we should be really proud of. The first is our magnet redesignation status. Just to highlight that a few weeks ago, we shared with all of you that UVA Health, the medical center, was once again recognized with magnet recognition. We should recognize that and acknowledge that. It's such a great honor. Fewer than 10% of the hospitals achieve this honor. And the magnet appraisers who spent 4 days here at UVA Health interviewed hundreds of our team members. And when they announced that redesignation status, the appraisers highlighted several accomplishments, including the really profound impact that our nurses have on patient outcomes, both in the inpatient and outpatient, the inpatient experience that they provide for our patients and their families, and the high percentage of the nurses that have professional certification as well as advanced degrees. I think as a system, as a community, we should be really proud of this accomplishment. Being married to a nurse, I can tell you that the nurses are the bedrock of medical care at UVA Health, and being able to recognize them and their excellence is something that we should all be very proud of. In addition, just want to call out one of the things that I am really most interested in is building distinguished, really differentiating programs for disease states. One of the things that I think is a promise of UVA Health is that we're going to be here for patients with the most complex problems. And we will be having differentiated, highly distinguished programs led by world experts where patients will want to come to us and we can provide care for them. And yesterday we announced the launch of a nationally focused programs for Ehlers-Danlos and other hypermobility disorders. As many of you know, this is actually a hugely growing area of medicine where we're learning more and more about these hypermobility disorders and the genetics and their manifestations. It's backed by a $3 million gift and will open probably in 2026 at Fontaine. As part of that, we were able to recruit, I think, probably the world expert in the field from the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Dacre Knight, and he will join us this summer. I think that's just one of the many achievements that UVA Health has in really attracting the best talent here to build these programs that will be so impactful for our patients. In addition, just to call out just a few other things, we have an expanded MRI suite that's coming online. And lastly, just to mention that we really want to celebrate an important milestone that just occurred at UVA Health, which is the graduation of our School of Medicine and School of Nursing students. Together, more than 500 degrees were awarded, 145 new nurses, which will enter the workforce, as well as 144 medical students that will enter residency programs. A huge achievement and a huge resource for the state and for us nationally to really produce some of the most outstanding residents that will go on and take care of all of us one day. Lastly, I think what I really love is being able to tell the stories of UVA Health through patient experiences. These stories, I think, are really impactful. They resonate with all of us. And this is a story that you'll see on a video that many of you may have seen. It highlights really the skill, the compassion, the technical expertise of Bert June, who leads our ophthalmology department. And the video that you'll see really captures, I think, so many of the aspects that why we're here in healthcare and what it means to really transform the lives of our patients. So I'll just introduce the video, and thank you very much.
There's 5 years difference between Kelly and I. She was 1 pound, 14 ounces when she was born. When she would walk into a room, the room would light up. She's truly a joy to have around. So when she turned 18, she moved out to Colorado, up into the mountains, and we kind of just went on with our lives. They didn't know how to deal with her out in Colorado. They really didn't. When she came to live with me, In January of 2022, she was malnourished at that point, and she had lost her sight about 3 years before that.
So Kelly came in with a very difficult eye condition. She was completely blind in one eye. She could not walk around. She could not feed herself. She really couldn't see anything other than just the presence or absence of light. We could not see in her eye to do a full eye exam. So we had to use specialized ultrasound techniques to measure the size of the cataract, to measure the size of her eye, just to know that the dimensions would even make sense for us to attempt a particular surgical approach. So I had to actually think of different ways of approaching this issue from a surgical standpoint. I spent actually a pretty good amount of time devising 3 different plans, and so we were, I think, prepared for every contingency.
So he did the surgery on November 12th. November 13th, we had our follow-up, and she went into the office and they took the eye patch off her eye and she started reading the chart.
I never thought I could see again, but I did.
And how did that feel?
It felt so good that I could walk right out of the office.
I went to grab her hand because I've been doing this now for 2 years, and she just took off. And she's walking in front of me, and I'm like, where are you going? Like watching your kid walk for the first time, you know?
I could read, write, grow trees, like to watch TV. Little House on the Prairie, I love that.
You know, some people say, oh, the future is bright, but for Kelly, it truly is. Kelly can see with the right tools, the right doctors, the right medicine, the right environment, people can thrive. And Kelly is a walking, talking miracle.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Deborah. So maybe just one last comment. I just want to take just a minute to thank the UVA Health team, Wendy, Melina, all the people behind me. I am blessed every day to work with some of the greatest people that I have worked with in my career. These people are incredibly passionate and dedicated to what we do, and I just want to thank them for the support they've shown me over the last 3 months. It's been the first month, I would say, was a little bit rocky, but I think we're getting our cadence, and I think we're doing great things. So I'm just really proud every day to work with all of these people and thank them for their support. So thinking about us moving forward, I'm pleased to introduce Stephanie Schnitzer. Stephanie is joining us as UVA Health's new Chief Financial Officer and joining us in July. Just a few words of introduction. She brings with us 25 years of experience in healthcare finance. She will join us on July 7th as our Chief Financial Officer for UVA Health. She will oversee all corporate finance functions across the health system, including budgeting, financial planning, analysis, capital project planning, reimbursement, revenue cycle, managed care, treasury, and supply chain operations. She currently serves as the Chief Financial Officer at Luminous Health. It's a Maryland-based system with nearly 2 million people that it serves across over 100 locations. She previously held senior leadership positions at Signatory Health and spent over 2 decades at Inova Health System, including serving as their Senior Vice President for Corporate Finance and the Interim Chief Financial Officer. And earlier in her career, she worked at Ernst & Young, auditing healthcare and not-for-profit clients. Throughout her career, Stephanie has helped guide major financial transformations, enhance performance, and support long-term strategic planning across complex health systems. At UVA Health, she plays a key role in advancing the organization's 10-year strategic plan, ensuring a strong financial foundation for us and for our clinical, research, and education and community health missions. She earned her bachelor's degree in accounting from the University of Dayton and a CPA license from the state of Ohio. So Stephanie, maybe just a couple words, if you don't mind.
Perfect. And, I'm a mother of 5, so I have a very penetrating voice. So I just wanted to say, thank you all for this opportunity. It is an honor, but also a great responsibility to take on this role with this prestigious organization, and I'm very, very excited about that. And I just want to thank you all for the confidence that you've placed in me. I can't wait to get started.
Great.
So next, we're in for a real treat. I want to take this time to introduce Dr. Mark Esser. Mark joined the University of Virginia in May of this year as the inaugural Chief Scientific Officer and head of the Paul and Diane Manning Institute of Biotechnology. Mark is responsible for the overall strategic direction and operations of the Institute, with a focus on accelerating biomedical research, advancing new treatments from discovery to clinical application. Mark brings more than 2 decades of leadership in the fields of immunology, virology, vaccines, and biologics. Most recently, he served as Vice President for Vaccines and Immune Therapies at AstraZeneca, where he led global development for more than 20 programs and oversaw a research and development team. He was instrumental in the development and the regulatory success of Evishield for COVID-19 prevention and Beyfortus for RSV. In addition, prior to joining AstraZeneca, he had senior leadership roles at Merck and the pharmaceutical product development, where he contributed to the development and approval of Gardasil for the prevention of cervical cancer. He is widely recognized for his contributions to vaccine and immunology research. He's had numerous peer-reviewed publications, over 130, and he earned his BS degree from Case Western University, but most importantly, his PhD at the University of Virginia here, so it's welcome home to Mark, in microbiology and immunology, and then he did his postdoctoral fellowship at the National Institutes of Health. Mark is here to give us the vision for the Manning Institute, which I think will excite all of you. And Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Mitch. And I love the video. What an important reminder why we get out of bed every morning to do what we do. I've had the great privilege of kind of working on the front end and developing medicines, but every time I've had a chance to meet a patient, it's always so heartwarming and such a reminder of the important mission we have. And just wanted to thank Jim and Bree and Mitch for helping onboard me over the last 30 days. You guys have been busy, but just it's been fantastic to be back here at the University of Virginia. So what I'd like to do is just provide a brief overview of kind of where I am after 30 days, kind of my thoughts of the Manning Institute really being a catalyst for innovation here in Virginia. Just share a little bit of my background, Mitch just talked about, and what I see as some of the overarching trends in the biopharmaceutical industry, which really relates to the opportunity for the Manning Institute and the University of Virginia. It's a time of a lot of change across the industry. How that's going to feed up into an overall mission, the partnership opportunities that I hope I can work with all of you to help implement, and kind of ending with that grand vision of where we want to be in 2030 in the top 10 institute by 2035. So as I mentioned, I really see the Institute being a catalyst for biomedical innovation and economic growth here in Virginia. And it can accomplish this by really doing 5 things. First and foremost being that drug discovery and development accelerator. How do we transform the exciting science going on here at UVA into medicines that can one day help patients? To do that, we want to be that talent magnet. This is going to be a great recruiting tool to recruit the best and brightest scientists, physicians, engineers, computer scientists to come to Virginia, not only for school, but to work and to train and to hopefully enable industry collaborations, to bring other companies to Charlottesville, to transform that science into real-world medicines, but equally, hopefully working with the folks in the Darden Institute, some of our budding entrepreneurs, start to create those startups and spin-outs right here in Charlottesville in Virginia. And then if we do 1 through 4, even remotely well, it's going to create a lot of high-quality jobs for folks here in the Virginia life sciences sector, which today is although small compared to other parts of the country, is an $8 billion industry here in UVA alone. So in the upper right, you can see the nice groundbreaking ceremony picture with Jim and Paul and others from back in, I think, December 2023, and sort of the sister organization or the partner, hopefully in this relationship, the BioAccelerator, which is up at North Fork by the airport. And I think if I recall, Governor Youngkin was awarded Governor of the Year by Bio. It's one of the big industry trade groups overseeing the biotechnology industry. And I read a little bit about it, which is, frankly, he's putting his money where his mouth is, which is great for the Institute. And the only thing I would change is there were some references to the Research Triangle here in Virginia. And I think the Research Triangle is for North Carolina, and Virginia is going to be the Research Diamond. And I really see the Institute being the crown jewel of that research diamond here in Virginia. So this is a little bit of my background. I think Mitch just walked through it. Kind of left Virginia, went to the National Cancer Institute. Actually, at the time, that's where the AIDS research program was. I kind of took my immunology expertise, worked in AIDS research for a number of years, went on to Merck, a couple other places, ending up at AstraZeneca over the last 10 years or so, and then really having that full circle moment, being able to come back here to UVA has been a thrill. On the right are some of the medicines that I've had the great privilege of having to work on and see regulatory approval and success, and just kind of wanted to highlight maybe my three favorite. The first and foremost was Gardasil. Maybe some of you have heard of it. This is a pretty important vaccine to prevent HPV-driven cervical and head and neck cancers. It's actually one of Merck's best-selling medicines now. It's been given to, I think, more than 100 million people to date. As Mitch mentioned, I kind of left my sort of management leadership role at AstraZeneca and jumped in and led the Operation Warp Speed program for AstraZeneca, working on both the vaccine and then Evusheld all the way through emergency use authorization. And this was an important medicine because it was dedicated to patients that couldn't respond to the vaccines, the cancer patients, the transplant patients, the immunocompromised, and it really became an important medicine to protect them from the virus and was quite successful. But I think the one that's most near and dear to my heart is Beyfortus. This is an antibody to prevent respiratory syncytial virus pneumonias in babies. And it was truly a kind of a passion project, a labor of love, and really a full circle moment when my granddaughter got a dose last November heading into cold and flu season. So as I looked back on the last 25 years, it's really been a revolution in how new medicines have impacted and changed medicines. Like to say, I've rewritten some of the textbooks, that I read way back when. I won't go through these in great detail just in the interest of time, but if you think about it, cancer mortality rates have decreased by more than 34%. Been great reductions in heart disease and hospitalization due to heart failure. And I think you can't open the newspaper or the news today without reading something about the GLP-1s and how they're going to transform medicines. But for me, on the other side, having worked on HIV in the early years, when I started, it was a death sentence. These patients were dying from, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Had the privilege of working with some folks that developed some of the first reverse transcriptase inhibitors, protease inhibitors, et cetera. They've now really made it a manageable condition. Folks can live a long and productive life and actually die from something else. But why I wanted to highlight that one is it's kind of an interesting story that many folks don't know, that one of the critical components in the drug Truvada, which is widely prescribed today, came out of Emory University. It was called emtacobine. And at the time, Emory wasn't known as a big biomedical powerhouse, but that single drug that was licensed to a small company called Triangle Pharmaceuticals was eventually licensed to Gilead. And that one drug, which has really been transformational for patients, has actually been transformational for Emory, because the royalties and the milestone payments that have flowed back to Emory University have been north of $550 million. So it just kind of puts the medicine and the economics in kind of context that it really only takes one to really have a huge payback in this endeavor. So, but looking ahead, there's many challenges. I'm sure you're all well aware, being in the healthcare system, that chronic conditions in an aging population are really going to stress healthcare systems, not just here in Virginia, but across the country and literally across the world. I think some of these stats are quite, scary, in fact, that 60% of Americans have one or more chronic conditions, 40% have two or more. If no medicines really become available or new treatments, 14 million Americans could be suffering from Alzheimer's by 2050. This would be a huge strain on healthcare systems across the country. And of course, the obesity problem is a big problem. Just to bring it home, I looked up in Virginia last year, 1.8 million people visited emergency rooms and hospitals due to chronic conditions that are quite common, and these continue to put strains on the healthcare system. So this is really, and then lastly, as we mentioned, some of these rare diseases, which are currently some of the new medicines being developed in gene therapy. Genomic medicine can really not just treat these patients, but ultimately cure them, which is incredibly exciting. So these are some of the opportunities. for the Manning Institute to make a difference. And when you look at it in the context of the whole biopharmaceutical industry and where this would fit in, the biopharmaceutical industry in the United States is literally one of the largest industries. Today, it's a $600 billion industry. It will grow to more than $1 trillion by 2033, with employing 800,000 people directly and more than 3 million indirectly. And obviously, some of those are right here in Virginia. One of the biggest challenges is just the cost to develop these medicines. It's now estimated to be north of $2.5 billion from start to finish to develop a medicine. And when you look at it from where I came from at AstraZeneca, some of the biggest companies are really struggling with what's affectionately known as the patent cliff. When medicines hit their patent expiry, it's great for consumers because the prices drop overnight and things like your cholesterol medicines become quite cheap and affordable. And what it incentivizes is the industry to continue to innovate. And one of the ways the industry innovates is by finding new medicines is, of course, investing in their own R&D. But nowadays, about 70% of that R&D is done externally. It's licensed in from either academia or smaller companies, and that's obviously a big opportunity here for UVA and the Biotech Institute. And interestingly, when you look at it, only about 5% of medicines actually make that direct jump from academia right to big pharmaceutical companies. They usually kind of have a couple of way station points in biotech startups along the way, and that's kind of the whole biopharmaceutical ecosystem in a nutshell. So as you also look at the industry, sort of the modalities to treat people have also changed over years. And this has really been driven by personalized medicine or precision medicine. I know that's a key pillar in the 2030 strategic plan here at UVA. And what that personalized medical and precision medicine approach is driving is really the advance of gene therapies, cell therapies, and biologics, which are becoming more and more prominent over the kind of traditional one-size-fits-all small molecule approach. And you can kind of see that in the graph on the right. In blue, you can see the percentage of small molecules being approved over time has decreased, where the number of biologics, gene therapies, and cell therapies have been increasing over the last couple of years. And this trend is going to continue. And obviously, this is where the Biotech Institute can play a big role. And that continued growth in biologics and cell and gene therapy is really going to drive sort of two things. The economics of new medicines, you can see that on the left, stratified by different therapeutic areas from oncology, infectious disease, et cetera. Today, biologics industry is about $450 billion, you can see that, and it will grow to about $700 by 2030. Largely driven by oncology, but other disease areas also playing a big role. And then equally, and I think this is also an opportunity for the University of Virginia, is to get these medicines approved, folks have to run clinical trials, obviously. UVA is well poised to capitalize on this, and you can see the cell and gene therapy clinical trial market is really going to almost quadruple in size from now until 2033. And again, I think this is an opportunity not just for the university in Charlottesville proper, but the whole UVA health network across the state. So just kind of coming in after 1 month, I've kind of gone to my go-to playbook the first 90 days. I think probably some of you know this book, Doing What You Do, and it's just a great roadmap for leaders coming into a new organization. But really the first 30 days has been a listening tour. I think I've met more than 75 folks, from folks in the graduate student society to facilities management, the architects, physicians, researchers, our philanthropy team, government affairs, trying to get that kind of 360-degree view of UVA and how the Manning Institute can fit into that. I've also been using a great book, Good to Great, many of you know from Jim Collins. He actually wrote a monograph for the social sectors, recognizing, I'm coming from, a different world in a pharmaceutical company to a university, and how we can use some of those best practices here for the Manning Institute. Really, the goal is kind of to refine that mission and vision over the next 30 days, working with the different faculty members, the deans, the department heads, and identify some of those strategic priorities. What are those few areas where we can focus on to really make a difference? I've kind of been asking people the same 3 questions, and it's been quite heartening that the responses are pretty darn consistent. And that's, what's UVA passionate about? What are some of the areas that we can be the best at, or at least one of the best at? And then the tough one, what's that resource economic engine that's going to fuel this, and how do we fit this all together to find that kind of sweet spot? I'll be working with an extended advisory panel, both internally to develop that hiring plan and process, meeting with the Korn Ferry folks next week. And I think importantly, working with Paul and others to build that external advisory board. I think we want to have sort of a broad view from both the business, law, philanthropy, and truly some experts in the pharmaceutical industry that I've already spoken to that would love to be a part of this mission. And then, of course, really get down to brass tacks and develop that budget, especially on getting us through opening day for the Institute, now scheduled in 2027. So as I've kind of talked to folks and asked those questions, it's been pretty darn consistent that the really areas of strength are no surprise. The Cancer Center in oncology is incredibly strong here. The immunology work in autoimmunity and allergy is strong. I think neuroscience is really quite amazing from all angles, from basic research through clinical care and surgery, is really a pillar of strength. That's why I put it in the middle. A historical strength and excellence in cardiovascular and metabolic diseases. Apologies for the formatting. And then kind of my old area, infectious disease and microbiology, continues to be strong here. If you think of like where some of those biotechnology opportunities are, and this is really the future of medicine, there's immune therapies with some of the biologics, the antibodies, things called T-cell engagers. It's really revolutionizing how we treat some of these diseases, especially in cancer. Cell therapies now are being used not just to treat people, but to fundamentally cure them. And then, of course, gene and genomic therapies are also now coming to fruition. We're not just treating folks, but actually curing them. To my pleasant surprise, there's actually kind of a fourth pillar of strength here, and I didn't know quite where to put it, but there's really a powerhouse of strength here in kind of the focused ultrasound therapy and how that's being used to kind of bypass the blood-brain barrier, and I'll highlight one example here in a little bit. All of this really needs to be built on a strong foundation of kind of the nuts and bolts platforms to do drug development. And all of this exists in different pockets around the university, and I think the goal is to bring it together in the Manning Institute. Everything from genetic engineering, we have the Nanostar Technology Institute, structural biology, and then of course the ability to manufacture some of these molecules right here at the Institute in Charlottesville. If all that goes well, we have excellent clinical trial capabilities to advance some of these modalities into the clinic and do it not just for Manning Institute programs, but others coming from around the state and even around the country. When you kind of layer these two together, this is how we would do this in a large company and think of the therapeutic opportunities, the different disease areas or therapeutic areas, layered on with some of the technologies, and then kind of working through what are those priority areas, what are those approaches, and then assembling some teams together to kind of make some big bets. One that's quickly risen to the top is glioblastoma, where I think you have all the pieces, or we do have all the pieces here to actually come up with novel therapies to help cure such a devastating disease. And when you kind of look at a high-level map, this is the drug discovery process. And And on the left is kind of the very beginning, and that's where you identify the target, that molecule, that gene or protein that can be drugged to impact a disease process. And some of the basic research and discovery research here at UVA has been traditionally strong, and it's only grown stronger. And actually the teams are very good at that very first step of what's called target identification. We have some folks doing kind of the middle pieces, what are called kind of lead discovery, lead optimization. This is where you kind of do the rigorous work of developing a molecule, going through an iterative process, testing it in animals, doing some things like drug metabolism and pharmacokinetics. I won't get into all the details. And kind of get into that middle box, which is called an IND, or an investigational new drug application, that would give you approval to take a molecule into the clinic. So this is really the strategic opportunity for the Manning Institute to work with folks here, to bring them together, to kind of focus in that early space. Once clinical trials get really large, become usually multinational, and you think about licensing or FDA or EMA approvals, that's really where the larger companies come in and you think about licensing or exiting or partnering. And then just taking this to the next layer, what I kind of showed on that previous slide was sort of that middle path of target validation through clinical trials. But it's also equally important in today's world to really bring precision medicine in from the beginning. And again, I know that's one of the big initiatives here as part of the 2030 plan. And what the result of that is really kind of coming up with what are called companion diagnostics or complementary diagnostics. So you have a tool that can identify the right patient with the right test to give them the right medicine to increase the probability of success. So that will kind of be built in from the top. There's already some nice work going on here to do that. And then the bottom one in green is the ability to manufacture the molecules. And many of you know there is a GMP suite that has been dedicated in the Manning Institute to be able to do that. All right. So when I kind of bring this all together, I kind of see really three missions: the accelerate, educate, and innovate. If you can only remember three things, it would be those three. The first mission is to accelerate the transformation of basic biomedical discoveries into new medicines. Recognizing this is a university and our core mission is to educate the future workforce, whether they go into the private sector or the public sector to have really great careers in drug discovery and development. And the last, number three, is kind of, I think, going to be the fun part. Really the ability to reimagine and reinvent the drug discovery and development process. Obviously, AI is going to play a big role in that because it's going to transform how we do discovery and development. So looking forward to getting some T-shirts or hats with transforming science into medicines. I think that's going to be our tagline. I actually came up with it during the interview process, and I'm sticking with it. So I like it. And this is just really a nice example of, meeting folks around grounds, talking to different people. I met this young lady, Dr. Natasha Shabani, and what a rising star. And this is, let me take a step back. One of the things that's been really heartening is just how collaborative everyone here is at UVA. It's when I've talked to folks, they're like, and I'm doing a collaboration with this person. It's cross schools, it's cross departments. Actually, I think that is the superpower and sort of the special sauce for UVA. And Natasha is kind of one of these examples. She's an immunologist. She's doing some basic science, but she's actually partnering with folks in the focused ultrasound therapy to come up with a really, I think, magnificent idea of how to get some of these immunotherapy medicines into the brain. I know this isn't everyone's space, but the blood-brain barrier is truly a barrier. It's very difficult to get medicines and drugs into the brain. And by using these microbubbles and focused ultrasound, you can actually get these kind of life-saving medicines into the brain to treat things like glioblastoma. And obviously the Department of Defense, shares my enthusiasm, and she was awarded a $5.5 million Era of Hope grant, which is really a vote of confidence. So, I hopefully have kind of shared with you some of my excitement and grand vision, but also we can't do this alone. We're going to have to do this in partnership, certainly with federal, state, and local governments, everything from traditional grants to incentives to, I think, an important component will be workforce development. A lot of these kind of jobs in biotechnology are special skill sets, especially in the bioprocess and manufacturing sector. Kind of highlighted how industry plays an important role in evolving medicines. Obviously venture capital to take the risk on nascent new medicines to move them into the clinic, but then partnering with biotech and then ultimately large pharmaceutical companies, everything from development to clinical trials to commercialization. I think we're, having been here working with Amy and the team, really quite fortunate. What a strong philanthropy organization we have here, and what dedicated alumni to the university and to the institute, but working with individuals, different societies like the Leukemia Lymphoma Society and the foundations like the Focused Ultrasound Foundation will be keys as we try to advance some of these medicines towards the clinic. And so kind of taking a shot at a draft vision statement, this is it. It is draft. But by 2030, the Paul and Diane Manning Institute of Biotechnology will become a global leader in biomedical research by attracting top-tier scientists and physicians, fostering a vibrant culture of entrepreneurship, and advancing public-private partnerships. And to put a little meat to that and some goals, by 2030, I'd like to have this ambitious goal that we would be moving 3 to 5 new medicines or molecules to the clinic each year, transforming those scientific breakthroughs into real-world treatments. By 2035, we'd aim to be recognized among the top 10 biotechnology institutes in the world. And together with our partners across Virginia life science sector, we will create those high-quality jobs and deliver those life-changing medicines to those in need. So with that, just thrilled to be back. Doubly excited to get my own hard hat with my name on it. It's been fun to be able to go out there and work with Ted and the team. Super passionate group in the facilities group, the architects, and the folks with Skanska. They're all in. So happy to take any questions.
Yeah, Robert?
Mark, first of all, thank you for coming to UVA. I really appreciate it. When Paul and I invest together in biotech in a number of different instances, and when he mentioned the possibility of getting you, I was pretty giddy that someone of your ilk and caliber would come here and lead this effort. And as you said before, it all gets back to the patient, and so it's really amazing to think that what you, and with the leadership of Paul and Diane, providing the funds to get this started, that this institute is going to save the lives of some of the people in this room, or our relatives, or our friends, and there will be people coming from all over the world to try to access the care that we're going to provide here coming out of this institute. So I just, on behalf of the board and in my own personal capacity, thank you so much for having faith in us, and we have faith in you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for that presentation, Mark. You mentioned around the beginning of it, the story about Emory and the $500 million in licensing fees that came from developing that drug. Is that the revenue model for the Manning Institute, is licensing the technologies that are developed? Or could you talk a little bit about just sort of, as we start getting into operations, what the revenue model looks like? Is that what it is, licensing technology? Is it, are there other elements of it that I'm not,
yeah,
that I can't
just getting
see?
started. I see JJ over there. Ultimately, we would love for some medicines to actually coming out of the Biotech Institute to ultimately be bringing back milestone payments and royalty streams to the university. That, of course, will be a key component of it. It takes a long time to get there, and we have to develop that kind of pro forma plan to get there. But JJ, maybe you'd like to comment.
Yeah, I would just say multifaceted pro forma, short-term, obviously, investments from UVA Central, long-term, obviously, to build to a sustainable model. But short-term, it will require investment, and we've shared that pro forma. And we're actually reworking some of the pro forma now that our fearless leaders joined our team.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally understand that, and obviously everyone's thrilled about this. I was just, as you look down the road, I was just asking about there will be opportunities potentially for revenue generation, and is that the model is, hey, we came up with a great new drug, and we license it to a drug company or a partner? I mean, is that sort of how it works? Or I guess you could imagine a world where when you put it into the clinical setting at the hospital, we create the opportunity for patient service revenue. I'm just curious about, and I don't know if this is 10 years from now or 5 years from now, or.
I would say it's all of the above, right? So federal funding, partnerships with biotech companies, obviously both the tech transfer as well as the commercialization of what is developed. So it's basic science all the way to commercialization. And I was at University of Delaware where this actually was quite accretive to the bottom line. So Paul, I don't know if you want to add any more.
These partnerships are becoming more unique. The royalty structures are kind of the way it was in the past. We're going to try to work on equity structures. So we're as we spin these companies out, we're going to ask for equity to be paid back to the university. So the university will get a piece of the equity in these companies. You don't have to wait long term maybe for the royalty to come to pass. But as we spin out these companies, which we're going to do as quickly as we can, and we have many researchers here that have the potential of spinning them into companies now, we want to come up with a different structure. So we want the structure to be so we will get royalty, but we'll also get a piece of the equity. So if they do go public, we'll have a chance to sell that equity in the public markets to come back to the institute or come back to the university. So Mark and I and the team are going to work together to kind of redefine what the institute does and how, instead of very small royalties that go to pharma in the past, where they took advantage of the universities and they took very, very small, they paid very small royalties, and they need us desperately because, as Mark says, 80% of the new medicines come out of the biotech or come out of the universities, not from the big pharma companies. I was with the CEO of Abbott not too long ago, maybe a year ago, and I asked him what comes out of his R&D center, and he says 5,000 people at 5 o'clock. So, so that is exciting. And what I also want to say is we couldn't be more thrilled to have Mark here as an industry leader and also understanding research. We are going to, as quickly as in the next few months, go meet with industry partners, all the big pharma companies and biotech, to try to develop these partnerships early and then showcase some of our research that's there. But a good question, Doug, but I really believe that we have an incredible team and we will change how these biotech institutes are perceived and how they get paid.
Yeah, well, please know that my question was a positive one and not a skeptical one. I mean, I'm tingling with the possibilities here, and it just seems very exciting. So that was very helpful for you to describe. And I mean, the equity piece could be the big opportunity for us. So that's really cool. Thank you.
As Paul can explain, the equity piece comes much faster. I mean, if you wait for a drug to be developed and commercialized, that could be 8 to 10 years. But along the way, the company's already gone public. It's raised private financing, but then it's gone public, and it's probably done a secondary, and it's done some more, even while they're in phase 2 and phase 3. So that, you're right, that creates a liquidity event for the university if it wishes to exercise it. So an investment in a company could result in capital coming back in 3 to 4 years versus 10.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Esser, as a physician, I'm extremely excited to see you here, and we're very grateful to Paul and Diane, of course. You know, the graduate introduced the buzz line, the future is it's plastics, right, in 1967. In 2020, the future is neurosciences. In 2025, the future is biopharmaceutics. We're also facing maybe some headwinds, particularly with the current administration and their change not only in philosophical issues, but in economic models. You're predicting a doubling from $600 billion to $1.1 trillion in the next 5 or 8 years. We're going to be on board in the next 5 years. How will the current modeling with the FDA and HHS affect us? Have we thought about that, or are we modeling to see if the feds change their funding model, how that's going to impact us in 5 or 8 years? I know private sectors won't change, but we're also looking at, I guess they're looking at the way flow of drugs is coming into and out of the country and pricing. So I just was curious if we've already started looking at those models.
I haven't started looking at those models, but suffice it to say, it is a time of massive change in the industry. And, you know, having talked to folks, I kind of use one of my favorite speeches that I think JFK Jr. gave many years ago, and I used it during the COVID crisis, that actually the Chinese symbol for crisis is actually the same symbol for opportunity. And I think the Manning Institute actually provides us an opportunity, at least on the front end, to reinvent and reimagine how we do that drug development and discovery process. You know, Paul just made the point that 80% of drugs are actually not developed or discovered in big pharma anymore. It's really the small academic and small biotech companies that are doing that hard work. And using the Institute to really reimagine and reinvent that model. I think that's where we can play, to think about it, because that $2.6 billion to develop a medicine is not sustainable either. The upfront, how we're going to work with NIH and grants, I know, you know, Bree, the team, Melina, are all working on that. They, you know, please feel free to comment. I'm not really in a position to comment on that. But I think we can use that Institute, you know, to think creatively of how to do this more effectively.
Mark, hi, it's David Okonkwo. As the other physician on the board, I also welcome you back to Charlottesville and back to UVA. And as a scientist who also got his start in a small lab here in Charlottesville. You know, I share your career trajectory and your passion for all of this. This is a really fabulous moment in the evolution of biopharma. As Mr. Manning is pointing out, these companies are cash balance sheet rich and P&L poor. And so looking for off-balance sheet development is the hyper focus right now, and offloading their internal R&D in favor of partnerships like this. So when you go on that roadshow to start to build those partnerships and relationships, that will be a huge catalyst towards the returns that Doug was trying to get at. I was with the C-suite of a major med tech company on Monday. Their focus in Washington right now is to create a split between the current administration's viewpoint on med tech and biopharma. And the reason for that in the world of tariffs is that 70+% of medical devices sold worldwide are manufactured in the United States, but less than 5% of medicines are manufactured in the United States. So we create them, we conceive them, we create them, we get them over the finish line, and then they're manufactured overseas. And there is a clear intent to onshore that. So is that part of this? And is there a way to capture that reality into this?
No, and thank you for bringing that up. And I lived that during COVID and Operation Warp Speed. You know, one of the critical reagents, proteinase cephros, that we use to manufacture biologics was all sourced out of China, and we couldn't get it. And basically, I had an HR pass from the White House that I could go to other pharmaceutical companies and take that critical reagent from places like Amgen and GSK and send it to AstraZeneca so we could manufacture those life-saving medicines. Unfortunately, it meant other medicines were not manufactured during that time. So there, having been on some blue ribbon panels, there is a huge drive to re-onshore some of that manufacturing capability and capacity here in the U.S. Spoke with Dean West yesterday. I think there is an opportunity there, especially with the GMP Manufacturing Center, to use it not only as a manufacturing center and a revenue stream, but actually as a training ground for future chemical engineers, the technicians, the analysts, the staff to work in those facilities. Because even if we brought a lot of that back to the U.S., we don't have the technical staff to do that work in the U.S. today. And I can attest to it from, you know, working up in Gaithersburg, Maryland. We would regularly have 300, 400 openings in those departments. So I hope I answered your question, but I think there is an opportunity. It's a bigger, a little bit more complex, because it's really around workforce development and bringing that capability and capacity back to the U.S.
They have to do it. There's 90% of our antibiotics and pain medications are made in China or India. So, and if we don't, there's not for this topic, but that's definitely something we have to really be concerned about. All right. Any other questions for Mark? Thanks so much, Mark.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it and look forward to working with you.
Yeah, thank you. And then literally, to keep things moving, we have a Medicine in Motion video that is getting queued up, and let it go. Thanks.
Hope doesn't punch a clock. Finding cures to diseases is more than a job, it's a calling. At UVA Health, we are driven to revolutionize the future of medicine. Every day, the world-class researchers at the UVA School of Medicine build on our legacy of discovery. We've developed an artificial pancreas that regulates blood sugar for patients with type 1 diabetes. We've discovered a revolutionary link between the brain and the immune system, creating new possibilities in the field of neuroimmunology. We've pioneered the use of focused ultrasound to stimulate the body's immune response to Parkinson's. And that's just for starters. Our new generation of researchers is blazing new scientific trails, bringing hope to those who need it most.
The world has taken note. As an international hub for scientific discovery and translation, we are shaping the future of medicine through innovation, collaboration, and excellence in research. We're building on this momentum with the opening of the Paul and Diane Manning Institute of Biotechnology. This best-in-class research institute will empower our people to revolutionize medicine from bench to bedside. This is where MD, PhD, and master's candidates will collaborate to transform research and inspire hope for people across Virginia and beyond. The future of medicine is here at the UVA School of Medicine. We hope you will join us.
Thanks so much. All right, we're going to go into closed session now. So Kenny, you?
Hey, Paul, before we go into closed session, I know Mark has some news, late-breaking news he'd like to share, if that's okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Rosner, President Ryan, members of the board. Sorry for the slight audible, but as the president just said, we did have some late-breaking news in the last couple days, and we thought it's important to share it with the board here this morning before it is shared more publicly in the press in the coming days. I'm humbled to share that in the last couple days, we have received 2 planned gifts for UVA Health earmarked for the Paul and Diane Manning Institute of Biotechnology. Each of those commitments are $25 million each. The donors have asked to remain anonymous at this time, but they did want it to be shared this morning. And Dr. Esser, they particularly wanted me to share this with you because of their excitement about your recruitment to the University of Virginia. So thank you very much. If that wasn't inspiring enough, those 2 $25 million gifts to the Manning Institute have now put UVA Health over their $1 billion goal for the Honor of the Future campaign. I think that deserves a round of applause as well. I will say I was around the table when we were discussing that goal, and that was a very aspirational goal at the time for UVA Health. And that is now over 45% higher than what they did in the last capital campaign. I'm sure Amy Carr in the fall meeting will give a more detailed report after we close the books on the campaign, but I would be remiss here this morning if I didn't thank a few people who helped bring us to this point. First of all, Amy Carr. Amy, can I ask you to stand? I know this board has heard a lot from Amy in the past, but Amy and your team have just done an absolutely tremendous job. I remember when I promoted Amy 5.5 years ago, I gave her a very simple charge, and that was double philanthropy for UVA Health. And that is not a small undertaking, but Amy has done it. The last 3 years, they have had to double their annual run rate, and Amy, your team has worked tirelessly around this, and a special thank you to you and your team. Second, I'd also like to thank the leadership of UVA Health. Campaigns are marathons, not sprints. They take some time, and I would be remiss if I didn't thank Dr. Rick Shannon, who was the EVP of Health Affairs when this campaign started. Rick was integral in making sure there was a close partnership between my office and the health system. Next, Dr. Craig Kent, as I just mentioned for Amy. Craig was instrumental in helping us double the philanthropic run rate for UVA Health. He was also a critical part of launching the Manning Institute and really worked hand in glove with Wendy and Amy and Melina and Marianne about really developing a culture at UVA Health where our physicians and our nurses were much more integrally involved in the philanthropy of our institution. So a special thank you to them. Dr. Rosner, I know you're new in the seat. but thank you very much for all you've done in this transition and this gift. These two gifts are also, the donor asked me to share, very much a vote of confidence in you and everything that you're doing for UVA Health. Melina, Wendy, and Marianne, thank you as well. You've been great partners in this process. I'd also like to thank President Ryan. For those of you who are not involved in private philanthropy and healthcare, I will tell you, in many institutions, it's a very siloed and bifurcated entity. They do their thing, the university does their thing. But that has not been the case with Virginia. Jim has been intimately involved at the table on almost all of our gift conversations at the very highest level and has actually made many of those solicitations himself. I'd also like to thank Dr. Ken Botsford, also a member of this board, but what you may not know about Ken is he is the chair of health for the Campaign Executive Committee and for the Honor the Future campaign. Ken, you and Nina have been extremely generous to the university, but maybe more importantly, you've been a great friend and advisor and mentor to all of us. And finally, I'd just like to thank the 52,000 donors who actually made this campaign possible. And as a reminder, the campaign is not over, so we do have a few more weeks to go. And again, we'll have a lot more to celebrate. But again, we didn't want to pass this morning without giving a special shout out to all those who made this happen and shared this exciting news. So thank you very much.
I just had a quick question, maybe the president can answer. Is it just this is a backroom question, I guess. Is it just a coincidence that we got two gifts for the same amount at the same time, or are they related in some way? I mean, I'm not looking to pry into the anonymity, but just, it feels like there's a relationship there. I'm just curious.
I'm going to defer to my colleague, who is probably going to say nothing.
Okay, well, that's a fair answer.
I think that's correct. Okay. Thanks, everybody. You want to read us into closed session?
Yeah, before I do, I have to say, Amy Carr has been unbelievable in this, and she is a great holder of secrets. I met with her for an hour yesterday, and she let on nothing about this. So, congratulations, Amy. Mr. Chair, I move that we go into closed session to discuss proprietary business-related information about the operations of the Medical Center, the School of Medicine, and the School of Nursing, where disclosure at this time would adversely affect the competitive position of the Medical Center, the School of Medicine, or the School of Nursing, specifically strategic personnel recruitment and retention, financial investment, facility needs, market considerations, growth initiatives, partnerships, and other resource considerations and efforts in light of market and regulatory changes for the health system and expected impact for fiscal year 2025, all of which further the strategic initiatives of the Medical Center, the School of Medicine, and the School of Nursing, and include employee performance and other proprietary metrics. Confidential information and data related to the adequacy and quality of professional services, competency, and qualifications for professional staff privileges and patient safety in clinical care to improve patient care for the Medical Center. Consultation with legal counsel regarding compliance with relevant federal and state legal requirements and legislative and accreditation standards, all of which will involve proprietary business information and evaluation of the performance of specific personnel. The relevant exemptions to the Federal Freedom of Information Act authorizing the discussion and consultation described above are provided for in sections 2.2-3711, A1, 6, 8, and 22 of the Code of Virginia. The meeting of the Health System Board is further privileged under section 8.01-581.17 of the Code of Virginia.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We're now in closed session. I'm going to turn it over to Mitch and from his remarks.
Thank you, Paul. So I was asked to maybe give some observation after my first 120 days on the job. The first 30 days, I will say, was a blur. But I think now, I want to share with you just some high-level thoughts about where we are as a health system, some of the challenges we face, some of the things that I think we need to engage all of you in helping us